Shabbat Shalom to everybody. Shalom, shalom. Peace, welcome, shalom, all that good stuff. This is your brother IQAhmath. Our first name, IQ is all the same. Here with another MOTC closing Shabbat class. Um, Today's topic, as you can see, is who are the 10 tribes of Israel today? The inspiration for this series that I'll be doing is really just to kind of show some love, man, to the 10 tribes, man. You know, it's been a while since I've noticed, through my, affiliations, or at least even seeing on the internet, um, any information or reminders of history regarding, the North, excuse me, yeah, the Northern Kingdom. Typically, we all kind of uh, pay homage, or have our reminders done during this holiday season of Thanksgiving, and there'll be some reflective histories that go into um, the the destruction and the genocide of the indigenous tribes, in particular, like the Pequot, the Wampano, the Narragansett Indians over there in New England. That they'll get highlighted, and just overall the destruction of the Indies will get reminded. But there hasn't been any information or any histories that I've seen in a while within Israel, for the Northern Kingdom and their plight and their connection with being of the 12 tribes of Israel and the chosen people of the Most High. I can only speak in particular on our testimony. Part one, which I replayed yesterday, that was from December of 2022. So it's been 3 years since we here at MOTC and myself have dedicated any time to really expound more on the 10 tribes. And at the conclusion of that video, we were in the midst of uh, you know getting channels taken down, a number of different strikes that was happening on our channel. So I had did a part two to this particular lesson, but it was taken down from my old IQAhmath channel. So it's only fitting to revisit and redo it. So if you haven't seen part one of this particular series, you have to go back and check that out first. There's I deal with it, the scriptural, the prophetic, start getting into the readings from some of the source material. So what I want to do is just kind of continue on that path of delving into the source material. Um, Much of the information that I'll be covering is going to be primary source based, which is eyewitness account. There'll be some oral traditions. There'll be some archaeology, a little bit in the language, um, the curses. I want to try to cover all those things. So this will be a series, and I'll be randomly probably recording lessons and uploading them. We'll see if I'll do any live. I might have time to do some live. We'll see. But this is information gathering and sharing for brothers and sisters who are curious about the 10 tribes, or just haven't seen any. Like I'm saying, we haven't put anything out on our channel in 3 years. And imagine how many people that came into the truth within 3 years and haven't gotten particular answers on that, or gathered information and sources to help them prove who they are, right? So that's the purpose of this. Just hit my spirit, to put this out there, just like I said, because of the Thanksgiving spirit that's out there, and just reflecting and looking at the histories that we haven't really touched on in a while. Time to revisit that and set some things straight. All right. So with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. We're gonna pick up where we left off at with part one. So there'll be just a lot of reading and information. So sit back, get your notepads out, your screenshot, um, you know, things on your phones or what have you, and we'll get to it. All right. So let's start off here, and where were we? So when we left off, we were reading from this book, Early History of the Creek Indians and Their Neighbors, right? And we ended at page 45. So now we're going to transition over here to this next book called A Voyage of Discovery into the South Sea and the Bering Strait. So this is history's, uh, this book was published in 1821. And this is from an account of uh, a Russian Navy ship that, had encounters with the indigenous tribes here on the West Coast, right? Now, this is going to give a physical description regarding what they saw and what they witnessed regarding the Native Americans here, right? It's on page 282. It says the physiognomy of these Indians is ugly, stupid, and savage. That's how Esau always loves to downplay and try to slander the physical attributes of our people. Why? Because of his jealousy. He's always trying to promote himself as being the purest, the most fit. Now, we all know that that's all bogus, right? This is the same reason why they have a billion-dollar industry for plastic surgery, where women are going out getting bigger lips, butts, and everything else, skin darkening. They've got melanin injections. I mean, the whole nine, and trying to emulate and trying to look like desirous of the attributes of our people. I talked about the um what's that guy's name? We just talked about him last week or the week before last. Guy that was over here, man, trying to harvest the DNA strains of the babies, man, trying to get life extension. I can't remember the guy's name up for nothing right now. Oh my goodness. I hate when this happens, but y'all know who I'm talking about. Edomite cat man out of Canada, uh, married a black woman, actually had a son with him. But they were out soliciting black women, saying that they wanted the stem cells from aborted fetuses from these sisters so that they can utilize the stem cells for life extension technology. This type of stuff that they deal with. The name will come to me, but if not, y'all know who I'm talking about. Just go back. If you don't know, we talked about it, I think, in DSTM either last week or the week before last. But his name is escaping me right now. Anyway, but this is how Esau does. They love to sit back and talk about how stupid, ugly we was, but at the same time are jealous and love to emulate our looks. Okay. So continuing on, it says, otherwise they are well formed, tolerably tall, and of dark complexion. The women are short and very ugly. See how they downplay our sisters? Meanwhile, they were running around having, raping our women. They couldn't have been that short and ugly that, you couldn't withhold your sexual urges of your attractions towards them. Right. So those things, brothers and sisters, man, just kind of bypass the ad hominem insults that they do within these books and these findings. But the problem is that you see many of which uh, of the Native Americans that you see now, they ain't what they look like back in the day, right? And that's not to say that there wasn't different shades of brown. Of course, the scriptures tell us that we're different shades of brown. The Lord said his heritage is like a speckled bird, all that. If we're coming from the earth, we're different shades of brown. So that definitely happens. Now, this is why you get some of the Aboriginal community and the indigenous claims of our people saying, hey, we're the original Indians. Blacks is Indians. We're not Negro. We ain't it. And for some that may be true. But that's not the case for others, So what they found was that the Indians that they encountered over here in California, they said that they were dark brown complexion. Okay. But notice this, it says the women are very short and they have much of the Negro in their countenance. So they had Negroid features. We ain't talking about the $5 Indians that you see, running around here claiming their heritage. We ain't talking about, if you go watch that movie Under the Flower Moon. If you haven't seen that, it's a very good watch. because it shows you the diabolical and the devious nature that the so-called white man has dealing with these white men who were privy to understanding that the Osage Indians in Oklahoma had land rights, that had oil, they were rich. These damn demons, man, schemed and plotted to marry into the tribes, killing off the the uh, the tribes so that they can be the rightful inheritors of the land based upon them killing the patriarchal line and the women who had land rights. Okay. And that also shows you how they were getting themselves into the tribes. They were intermarrying. They were creating these covenantal agreements with the tribes. You know, some of the women they were, and on the flip side, some of the indigenous tribes, some of the tribes was taking their women captive and was, making wives and concubines of them. And some of them, came into the tribes that way. Now their offspring will be true natives, but not them. But they'll, carry the legacy on and say how they, came up within the tribe and they're real indigenous. No, if we're just dealing off of physical description, so this is eyewitness account. This is primary sourcing of what did the Indians look like, right? Short. No, I'm gonna skip that part. It says they have much of the Negro in their countenance, only that a Negroid head may be called handsome in comparison with theirs. So they would say, man, they were so ugly, man, that the Negroes look better than them. All right. But again, this is Esau, man, out here playing games with the envy of what he saw. Right. Now it says they are principally distinguished from the Negroes by their very long, smooth, and coal black hair. So they knew that there was a difference between the Southern Kingdom and the Northern Kingdom, right? Now they said it was because of the smooth, coal black hair, right? So, even when you're dealing with some of the race-based politics that go on within the Israelite community and just overall in general within the black community, it's like, hey man, they ain't no way that they are people because look how light they are. We can't sit back and play these color games, right? Because in this scenario, they were both dark, but they said, man, one had the quote unquote good hair and the other ones didn't. I think even Chris Rock, man, had a movie called Good Hair. But y'all know how that is. You come up in communities and you see somebody got the wavy hair and all that, and they like, oh, you got that good hair. Yeah, I got Indian in my family. You've heard those scenarios. Some of y'all may have said that yourself before you know who you were. You understand? So that's what they notice here. So just looking at the physiognomy, or you looking at um, the complexion and the descriptive nature of what they look like, it's a far cry from what we've been shown or told nowadays. And like again, that's not to say because you have some of the Northern Kingdom tribes intermarry within each other. The offshoots, the ones that was with the Spaniards and all that. From the Aztec, the Mayans, that migrated up north, got with some of the indigenous tribes, and sometimes with the biologies uh, strands mixing up, you can see some physical attributes get changed. But that doesn't mean they're not Israel. We all just got different shades of brown, man. We all come in different forms and fashions, and even with the hair textures. All right, so that's what they was noticing. Let's continue on. Here's another book called Origins of the American Indians by Lee E. Huddleston. He's quotes from different sources as well, but in this particular passage here, in my screenshot, I have the book. I didn't put the page number, so if you're curious about the page number, just hit us up, and I can shoot you the page numbers and whatnot if need be. But if not, go get the book yourself. All right, I would strongly encourage that. So Luminous is a theologian, and wrote a book on theology and his observations of the and research regarding the origins of the American Indians, and this is quoted from Lee Huddleston. So let's see what Luminous says. That says Lumnius introduced most of the theological arguments which were later advanced to indicate a Hebrew origin for the Indians. Now, notice the scriptures tell us that the mouth of two or three witnesses let everything be established. That's in Second Corinthians 13 and 1, I believe. Don't have me misquote. Let me make sure. So we're gonna get, and that this is coming from the book of Deuteronomy 13. But it says here, this is the third time I'm coming to you, and the mouth of two or three witnesses shall every word be established. So we're talking about eyewitness testimony again. And we notice here, Numnius is number one. We're going to notice him as number one. Now he says that he made theological arguments which were later advanced to indicate a Hebrew origin for the Indians. The basis of his story of how the Jews got to America was the fourth book of Ezra, whose authority Lumnius accepted despite its apocryphal standing. The authority of the fourth Kings and the prophet Isaiah supported the Ezra's account. Now he's talking about, Second Kings. He's talking about Second Ezra 13 regarding the post-Assyrian captivity, where the northern tribes sailed from their captivity in Assyria to Arsarif, which is later identified and known as America. This is agreed upon by various scholars and cartographers, right? Matter of fact, I'm going to play this clip out of this movie, 1492. Before we do that, fair use. This is used and is going to be played based upon teaching, scholarship, and commentary. All right. Fair use. Now, let's bounce over here. I think I still have it here. And watch this.
Why do you wish to sail west?
To open a new route to Asia. Asia is the richest kingdom, the land of spices and gold. At the moment, there are only two ways of reaching it. By sea, sailing around the African continent. The journey takes a year. Or by land. But the Turks have closed this route to all Christians. There is a...
I remember he said he sail around through Africa. Around Africa is going to take about a year.
Third way. By sailing west across the ocean sea.
The distance is unknown. It's said to be infinite.
Superstition. I believe the Indies are no more than 750 leagues west of the Canary Islands.
Can you be so certain?
The calculations of Toscanelli, Marin de Tir, Esdras.
Esdras is the Jew.
So what's worse?
2 minutes, and already you're a dead man.
For telling the truth?
Yes. We are burning people for less. The men you're about to confront have no emotion.
So that was a powerful clip that they had from 1492. He said that they utilized Ezra as a source in regards to the route that the 10 tribes came here to the Americas. They saying, look, Ezra's even saying you can go west and there's civilization there, right? So this is what this theologian scholar, Lumnius, is also acknowledged in his research and saying yes. And we're talking 1500s that they were talking about this. See, the mystery of the 10 tribes has been floating around for centuries now, right? Everybody wants to know, where's the 10 tribes at? They're trying to figure out the Valley of the Dry Bones, Ezekiel 37, where and how these tribes are going to come together, because it's prophesied that they're going to come together. Jeremiah said that the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together. All of these particular prophecies. Who are these 10 tribes and where are they? So we can put the pieces of the puzzle together. So another witness is acknowledging that Ezra is a valid source when it came down to researching where and how the 10 tribes got where they're at now. So continuing on, Now it says, a detailed discussion of these passages and of the development of the biblical arguments for Indian origins will be given below. Briefly, Lumnius' argument was that the 10 tribes of Hebrews exiled to various parts of the Assyrian Empire by Shalmaneser had escaped to Arsareth, which Lumnius identified as India America. All right. So not only does he acknowledge it, the Jewish Encyclopedia says Arsareth is America. Again, there's other sources that acknowledge it as well. So remember in that movie, in that clip, it said that if they travel around Africa, it's going to take a year. Well, Second Ezra says it's going to take a year and a half. So we just talking about estimates. Even in the movie, they said nobody knows for sure. But the scripture said it was going to take a year and a half. They even made a quote saying it's going to take a year by one method of travel. So just putting all those things together, we got to draw particular conclusions, right? Let's continue. Now, it also says here, Diego Duran. Diego Duran was a friar, a Dominican friar who also spent time amongst the Aztecs. He was condemned for, helping them maintain their traditions, but he's another eyewitness account, primary source, due to his dwellings amongst the tribes and his observances. And he also gave acknowledgement and said that he's only going to use the scriptures to validate his observations, right? So even Isaiah 8:20 says, if they speak not according to this word, it's because there's no light in them. But one thing Diego Duran acknowledges that he said, the real truth, it can only come through revelation of the Most High. You understand? So the Spaniards, they're acknowledging, hey, we can hypothesize. I can, interpret the scriptures as best I can. I can, watch the histories. I can see the traditions. I can see the culture. I can see all these things, but I can't confirm it because the Most High ain't dealing with me. Look at this. Diego Duran was much less equivocal in his theorizing, since he said he had not received a revelation from God, which was the only way to determine for certain where the Indians originated. He would resort to conjecture. He concluded that the Indians must be descended from Jews. His opinion was based on the strange ways and customs and the lowly conversation of the natives, their, quote, way of life, ceremonies, rites and superstitions, omens and hypocrisies, all so like the Jews that the Indians themselves must be Jews. Now, look at this. Now, remember, he said the only way that it could be really confirmed is there's got to be a revelation from God. Well, him being a Spaniard, he's not going to get the revelation. Psalm 147, 19, 20, classic scripture. He showeth his word unto Jacob, his statutes and his judgments unto Israel. And you may say, oh, that we talking about the patriarch Jacob. We ain't talking about only the Israelite. Oh. Okay. Calm down. Isaiah 43, or maybe it's 47. Let me see. No, not 47. Is it? Let me think. Isaiah 40. Let me think. Come on, yeah, IQ. Matter of fact, let me check my my precept in my 48. 48. Let's jump over. Isaiah 48 and 1. Hear ye this, O house of Jacob, which are called by the name of Israel, and are come forth out of the waters of Judah, which swear by the name of Yahweh, and make mention of the power of Israel, but not in truth nor in righteousness. What's the point? The house of Jacob also was called the house of Israel. So when we read it in Psalms 147, 19, when he says he showed his word unto Jacob, meaning he only shows it to the Jacobites. He's only showing it to the Israelites, the 12 tribes. It can only be confirmed and understood via the children of Jacob, his statutes and his judgments unto Israel. So when we're talking about the ordinances, how the Bible is to be read, the instructions, that's what a statute is. A statute is a command, it's an understanding, it's an ordinance. It helps us understand instruction. That can only be understood by a child of Israel. His judgments are unto us, right? So how the Most High judges, the prophecies, so forth and so on, can only really be understood, determined by an Israelite. That's thus saith the Lord. Why can I say that with so much boldness and confidence? Because verse 20 says, he have not dealt so with any nation. This is why Diego Duran, the friar, was saying, uh, I'm not receiving this by revelation of the Most High. I can only theorize based upon what I'm seeing. Now, what he was seeing was on point, but it wasn't solidified in his spirit because he knew that the Most High was not dealing with it. And as for judgments, they have not known them. Praise ye the Lord. That's why he said, I don't know. I can't confirm it because it's not. I can't connect with the Most High on it. This is how we see the histories, we see the archaeology, we see the prophecies, we read the scriptures, and then guess what? Our spirit confirms it. That's what gives us that conviction. That's what made you, me, and everybody else that's listening and watching that's of Black, Indian, or Native American, Hispanic descent, watching this saying, yeah, that's right. We are the people. This only confirms it even more. Romans 8:16, the spirit itself bears witness with our spirit that we are the children of the Most High. That's right. Our spirit's going to take the rest. That's where the revelation that prior Diego Duran was missing. He couldn't get the revelation, but he got everything else that put the pieces of the puzzle together. All right. Now let's go back. It says Duran found support for his belief in observations of Indian cultures, which he thought matched very well with the biblical description of the Jews. Duran relied on the Bible itself. Again, Isaiah 8:20. His source was the second book of Kings, 17, verse 6, right? In the 9th year, Hosea the king Assyria captured Samaria and carried the Israelites away captive. You know, he was just quoting Second Kings, the 17th chapter, 5th verse on down, regarding the 722 BC captivity of the Native Americans and the rest of the 10 tribes. All right. Now, continuing on, this is on page 39. It says, apparently, he referred to Osiris legend from Ezra. As a consequence, his description of the remote land Osiris seems to be a reference to Assyria. Evidently, the story was so well known that it did not require elaboration. So they were trying to figure out, was Osiris Assyria or was it somewhere else? Well, clearly, it said that they were going to be removed in 2nd Ezra 13. They were going to depart after they left from the clutches of King Shalmaneser. They fled Assyria. So Osiris couldn't have been Assyria. It had to be another land. They said they were going to go to another land where never mankind dwelt. So it couldn't have been Assyria. People were dwelling in Assyria. Okay. So continuing on. Remember, that's why I said he was trying to figure it out, but the revelation didn't come to him completely. Duran found additional confirmation in the story of Hosea, chapter 1, verse 10. That the Most High had promised to multiply the people of Israel like the sands of the sea. Surely, he argued, this promise was fulfilled by the multitudes the Spanish found in the New World. Furthermore, he noted the Indians of Mexico had traditions of long journeys, such as the one from from Assyria to Osiris. Remember that? They said the Indians of Mexico, they had a tradition. They had oral traditions that was being told to them of how they got where they were at. They also had traditions of flights, such as the Exodus from Egypt. So this is how they were putting things together. Deuteronomy 32 and 7. Remember the days of old. Consider the years of many generations. Ask thy father, and he will show thee, thy elders, and they will tell thee. Right? So our people were relying upon oral traditions being passed down. Friar Diego Duran was receiving these, and he said they have an Exodus story about them leaving out of captivity, coming to another place, another land, very similar to the Exodus, right? Now, this is what we see, everything playing out right in front of us, all right? So that was one thing that he was noticing, is the oral traditions that was happening. Now, they said they had one coming from Assyria to Osiris, so they knew about the Assyrian captivity and them coming over there to America. Dropping down, it says, finally, Duran compared the secret mountain sacrifices, legends of pests, plagues, wars, and other disasters. So, you know, they're hearing about the cursings that happened in Egypt, the sacrifices that were being done on the mountain regions, right? Now, if you're dealing with the Northern Kingdom, they had what's the name of that mountain? Mount Gerizim, I believe it was, in the Northern Kingdom. And then you had Mount Sinai, where we was getting, the laws and whatnot. So even when you're dealing with, I believe it's in, let me think about it. Uh, in, dang, it's escaping me. It was in wickedness too, because the priests were taking the burnt offerings into the mountains, and they was, offering up, um, they were offering up bad sacrifice. I can't think of it off the top of my head. I know in Deuteronomy 33, it does mention that righteous sacrifice was going to be offered up in the mountains. But let's look at this one. And it says, and of Zebulun, he said, rejoice, Zebulun, in thy going out, and Issachar in thy tents. They shall call the people unto the mountain. There they shall offer sacrifices of righteousness, for they shall succor the abundance of the seas and of the treasures hid in the sand. So, this is just one of the testimonies that we see that our people was offering up, the sacrifices in mountains. And this is what Diego Duran was acknowledging as well. All right. So he said he saw all these particular ceremonial rites that was happening. It was reminding him very much of what and how the children of Israel was getting down. He said the legends of pest plagues, wars, and other disasters. So he seen curses that was befalling upon them. Even the wickedness, child sacrifices, cannibalism. Yeah, see, these are all things that our people was getting caught up in. So even the unrighteous things were bearing witness against us. Psalms 106:35 down. It says, but we were mingled among the heathen and learned their works. And they served their idols, which were a snare unto them. That's what happened to our people. We did not destroy the nations, the Canaanites that was before us, Amalek, all of them. We didn't destroy these nations as the Most High instructed us to. We messed around and started learning of their ways. That's why Jeremiah 10:2 says, learn not the ways of the heathen, for the custom of the people are vain. Yeah, because our people is going to be doing what? Getting into astrology, astronomical worship. They're going to be cutting down trees, set them in the forest. They're getting ready to do that in the next month? Less than a month away. They're getting ready to do celebrating Christmas. They just got through stuffing their fat faces with ham and turkey and mac and cheese and greens and black-eyed peas and whatever else comes with apple pie. They just haven't stuffed themselves with all of that. You understand? And even in the Israelite community, some of them taking leftover plates, which is wild. I heard one camp say, you don't go on Thanksgiving Day. Go get a leftover plate the next day. Good Lord, we got a long way to go. But this is the problem. It says, yea, they sacrifice their sons and their daughters unto devils. That's where the child sacrifice comes into play. You've seen movies like Apocalypto and all of them where human sacrifices are being done. All those things and wickedness. Let's not forget, the Northern Kingdom had no righteous kings. Northern Kingdom was notorious for offering up unrighteous sacrifices, idolatry, uh, so forth and so on. Right? Let's not forget that, because that is key, and that's one of the identifiers as we see what went on with the Northern Kingdom. Is they were sitting back offering up wicked sacrifices. They were getting involved in human sacrifice. Their children being sacrificed, the whole nine. It was all bad, as they say. Okay, but these things were still all understood and acknowledged, because it would tie you back into saying, yeah, that must be the people, because they doing the same thing that their ancestors did. Some is doing it in righteousness with the zeal for the Most High, as Romans 10 says. Romans 10. Now it says here, for I bear them record that they have a zeal of the Most High, but not according to knowledge. Right? That's what happens with our people. Salaki, y'all. Salaki. Let me get back to sharing. Okay. Make sure my screen is sharing again. All right. So even in the unrighteous sacrifices that our people was doing, it still draws a conclusion to say, hey, these are the same people. They have the same history. They have the same habits that we see that was going on back in the biblical times. And now that we see it going on again, these must be the people, because even they're having a zeal for the Most High, but not according to knowledge, right? So that's why we can look at the zealous nature of our people, even if they ain't doing it right, but we can see the effort was being done in the spirit of righteousness. They just didn't have it all. They just couldn't put it all together. All right. So continuing on here. It says, finally, Duran compared the secret mountain sacrifices, legends of pests, plagues, wars, and other disasters, child sacrifice, and cannibalism. He thought all these legends and myths were common to both the Indians and the lost tribes of Israel. At this point, Duran introduced his strongest argument that which most forces me to believe that these Indians are of Hebrew lineage is the strange pertinacity they have in not casting away their idolatries and superstitions, living by them as did their ancestors, as David said in the 105th or 106th Psalm. The relevant passages read. So, that's what we just got to reading. He's acknowledging that, our people have a strong traditional history. Even in wickedness, we continue on following after these particular ways. All right. Now let's continue on. Let's continue on. Just get out the way. All right. So here's another page from the book. The only other writer this author found who accepted the Issachar variation of the 10 lost tribes theory is Balthasar de Medina in his Crónica de la Santa Provincia de San Diego de Mexico of 1682. So this goes into a testimony where two particular scholars researched and came to the conclusion that one of the 10 lost tribes was the Mexicans being of the tribe of Issachar. Some, use this as one of their sources to, substantiate the 12 tribe chart. Be that as it may, one thing's for sure, two things for certain. At the mouth of two or three witnesses, everything's going to be established. You had two that says, yeah, these particular tribes within the Aztecs and the Yucatan have very similar spirits to what we read about that was blessed among the children of Issachar. So not going to argue about the tribe and all that. I mean, the tribe chart and all of that. We'll agree that the Mexicans are of the Hebrew origin or the one of the tribes of Israel, whether they're Issachar or not. That's been theorized. Okay. Now continuing on, it says, although Medina thought the South Americans and Yucatecans were descendants of the Gentile Icatan, father of Ophir, the Mexicans are originally of the 10 tribes captured by Salmanezar and of the family of Issachar, whom the Indians recognize as their special ancestor. See that? So they see the correlation between the Native Americans. They acknowledge that Issachar was a special ancestor to them. They knew another tribe dwelt amongst them or in proximity to them, right? And now you have some scholars and theologians and eyewitness friars or whatnot, and coming together saying, yeah, you know what? We believe those are the Issacharites down there in Mexico. All right. So take that one. Let's continue. Here's another book called Stolen Continents by Ronald Wright. This is page 17. This is more or less dealing with like that book that we just got to reading about prior to. Some of the quotes from I'm sorry. The next book, Aztecs, is from Diego Duran. That's where history of the Native Americans, origin of the American Indians used some of the quotes. All right, but we'll get to that in a minute. But let's look at this about stolen continents. Very important, because what are we talking about? We're talking about colonization. We're talking about um, forced cultural assimilation with the Spaniards, taking over lands, conquering a people, destroying their culture, their history, their language, raping the women, killing off the men, enslaving the boys and girls, right? This is all things that we see here. So this is an important book, as we see, regarding stolen continents, not bought, not negotiated for. This is the legacy that you have from the Spanish, Portuguese, British, so forth and so on. Hernan Cortez, a famous um, Spanish conquistador, is being acknowledged in this particular book. He's out of Cuba, you know, little rich politician, landowner, whatnot, man, set sail out with hundreds of, Spanish soldiers, slaves, and the whole nine, man, going out conquering and everything else, right? But just look at this, man. Hernan Cortez, 33 years old and bored with his life, as a landowner and politician in Cuba, decided that he would succeed where others had failed. Did you hear that? Just because he's bored, this is what he decided to do: to go out and slaughter, colonize, steal, murder, and destroy our people, torture our people, because he was bored. Now look at this. He was a robust man of good height for a Spaniard of that day, which probably means he was about 5'4". You talk about a height. What do you call it? Little man complex. 5'4", man, and took all of his damn anger out of being a damn midget. Now don't get me wrong, I ain't the tallest brother in the world, but I'm damn sure taller than 5'4". And here you go. He's running out here, man, saying, "F the world. I'm going on a tirade." And they said that was a good height for a Spaniard of that age. I mean, of that time. So you notice how a lot of things, even the stature, the scriptures even speak about the stature. Our stature is going to be changed. When we was in our prime, in our fighting weight back in the scriptures, man, we were strong, tall, athletically built. We was some still stone cold warriors, man. As time went on, our statures were changing. We gotten shorter and shorter, and weaker and weaker or whatnot. So for them, they said a Spaniard, man, 5'4" was good height. But notice this: it says he had not yet acquired the portliness of later life, but had the high chest and bow legs of a horseman. His eyes, serious but warm, were set in a face too squat to be considered handsome. Like many Castilians of his time, he was consumed by ambition, and he had the talents to pursue it. With his own funds and backing from the governor of Cuba, Cortez assembled a much larger force than previously seen. 11 ships, listen to this, 600 Spaniards, 200 native Cubans, African slaves, horses, cannons, muskets, crossbows, and the savage war dogs that wore armor, weighed up to 200 pounds, and were routinely fed on Indian flesh. Let that sink in. They were feeding the dogs Indian flesh. And you have Agent Orange running around here last year talking about, in Ohio, they're eating the dogs. Listen, this damn bad. You were feeding our people to the dogs. What are you talking about? You're talking about our people were eating the dogs and eating the cats, which is a lot of propaganda and BS that was going on, slandering in our people. But at the same time, the real history was the Spaniards was out here feeding our people to dogs. Now it says, for political reasons, the governor withdrew his support and denied permission to sail. But in 1519, Cortez went anyway. So you got to remember too, the time framing that we're looking at with the slave trade and everything else did not begin in 1619. So I know there was a lot of hype back in 2019, the 400 years and the year of release, and we're finally out of our captivity, and now we can go back home, and all of our people, a lot of our people, jetting out and getting going back to Ghana and all these other places. that was not prophecy. That wasn't correct timing. Our bondage, our captivity, the documents of slave ships, that started in the 1500s. Let alone the indigenous tribes have been over here well before that. I mean, you're talking 722 BC coming over here. I mean, our people's over here for thousands of years. And then we're dealing with even with the transporting of the Native American or the Indian tribes in the Caribbean. That was in the 1500s as well, and they was going back to Spain. They was taking them back to Spain. We'll see that in a minute. So the 400 years, that wasn't from 1619 to 2019. Because as you know, and we all know, we're still in bondage, we're still in captivity, and stuff is getting even worse. You talk about Jacob's trouble is knocking on the door. Yeah, it's that time. This ain't the year of release. This ain't the year of our awakening and all that. No. All right. 1519, Cortez went out with the 11 ships, the 600, Spaniard soldiers, 200 native Cubans that they brought along to serve in this quest for conquering. And they still had what? African slaves. This is at 1519. Now, mind you, it wasn't massive numbers that came from West Africa, but they were still there nonetheless. Continuing on. Now, check this out. If we're just talking about curses, we're talking about, because that there was a for a long time, some years back, I don't know if it's still strong, I'm sure it is, that there's a Negro only populace within the Israelite community. Said, man, the only Israelites is Negroes, only blacks, right? The other ones, they don't fit the curses, man. The Mexicans, Cubans, Puerto Rican, they don't fit the curses. Unless they're Afro-Cuban, unless they're Afro-Puerto Rican, they don't fit the curses. Now here we're going to get a testimony regarding Tupac Amaru II, which was one of the chiefs and leaders of the Incas. The Incas is down in South America. Now, notice this. May 18th, 1781, Tupac Amaru II was executed in the same square that had seen the death of his ancestor 2 centuries before. So 2 centuries before, that's 1581, approximately, they had been killing the Inca off for 200 years already at that point. It says he was made to watch his wife, uncle, and elder son had their tongues torn out and were then garroted. You know what a garrote is? A garrote is when one gets, the proper term is asphyxiated or choked out. But they were using anything from metal wires to fishing lines, various, ropes. So you're talking about lynchings and hanging. Yeah, the Inca was getting hung too. And they was getting choked out with metal, thin metal wiring, piercing through the skin, cutting through the throat, cutting off the oxygen. Tupac Amaru had to watch his wife tongue get cut out and then get choked out. His uncle, the same thing, and his elder son he had to witness this, man. And all people talking about forget, they can get something. What? Not every. Okay, I'm gonna leave that alone. It doesn't stop there. The Spaniards reserved a special fate for the Inca. His limbs were tied to horses, which were spurred in the 4 directions. Yeah, you talk about quartering of a man. One arm tied to one horse, another arm tied to another horse, one leg tied to one horse, the other leg tied to another horse. And then when they, go. And the horses try to separate limb from limb as best they could. Now the cold part is they did this to him a couple times and they couldn't rip him. Notice this, it said the Spanish reserved a special fate for the Inca. His limbs were tied to horses, which were spurred in the 4 directions. Quote, a spectacle never before seen in the city. Well, isn't that one of the curses? Isn't that one of the curses that was pronounced upon our people in Deuteronomy 28? Thou shalt become a proverb and a byword, an astonishment Where is that at? Here, verse 37. And thou shalt become an astonishment. They said they hadn't seen torture like that ever before. A proverb and a byword among all nations, whither Yahweh shall lead thee. You see that? Now, continuing on, it says, a spectacle never before seen in the city, but despite a month of torture, the Inca's frame resisted the symbolic rending of the Tawantinsuyu. So they went through a month of trying to rip this man's body apart. Can you imagine? One day, yeah, don't happen. All right. Next day, well, do it again for a month, putting him through this. But they couldn't take him out. It says, after being stretched in midair like a spider, they got to the point where the body was lifted up like a spider web, right? They had him stretched out. He was taken back to the scaffold and what? Chopped into pieces. A Spanish eyewitness wrote, a Spanish eyewitness, here we go. Primary source. That was there, said, man, I seen it. Let me tell you what happened. It says they cut off his arms and feet. They did the same with Michaelia. And from the others, they took the heads to send to different towns. Did you see that? They was cutting up the heads, man, sending them out to different towns, and instilling fear in the Inca, letting it be known, we're here and you're next. Bow down, serve, get into slavery, or else. Look, the torsos of the Indian and his wife were taken to Picchu, the hill from which Tupac Amaru had besieged the city, where a bonfire had been lit. They were thrown in and burned to ashes, and these were then cast into the air and into a stream that runs nearby. Thus ended Jose Gabriel, Tupac Amaru, and Michaelia, whose pride and arrogance were such that they named themselves monarchs of Peru. See, they sit back and blame them. Oh, they're pride and arrogant, man. We got to take them out. They didn't want nothing to do with anyone who was going to stand up for themselves and their people. It continues, though. Now look at this. Visitor Arichi sent a long report to Madrid. So here's another eyewitness, one who is, putting in information, sending reports back to Spain regarding what's going on there in South America, dealing with the Incas and the Peruvians down there, right? And now he's getting ready to give his eyewitness account, okay, in regards to what he saw and his recommendation of what should happen to the natives there, right? Now, this is what's this guy's name? Jose, yeah, his first name Jose Antonio de Ricci. Now he was, he was riding with the Spaniards or whatnot. He was a visitor, an observer, and a prosecutor of our people, right? And here he was sending back notes to Madrid, giving his reports. And what does he say? He recommended removing some abuses, but his main thrust was ethnocide. Now, remember this, because this is a tactic that they continually still use to this day. They said, man, we got to calm down on the abuses, man. We out here cutting off heads, sending them around to different villages. We're quartering people. We're cutting off arms, legs, feet. Man, it's out of control. What we need to do is ethnocide. You say, what is that? That's the destruction of a nationality by eradicating its leaders, identity, and culture. See, Esau, hey, look, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Okay? Ethnocide is going on right now, destroying nationality, eradicating leaders, identity, and culture. They killed off all of the leaders that, we know about the civil rights movement: Fred Hampton, Huey P. Newton, Marcus Garvey, all the names, all the famous names, MLK, if you will, Malcolm X. Remove the leadership, Che Guevara, whoever you want to include, right? Any semblance of leadership, they said, man, take them out. We have to cut them off. Psalms 83. For lo, thy enemies make a tumult, and they that hate they have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people. That's what you call what Jose Antonio was doing. Ariche, him being a visitor, he said, look, ethnocide is the way to go. We can strip them of their language, their leaders, culture, their national identity, the whole nine, man. We erase all of that, they'll never know who they are. They'll forget their culture. They'll be subservient to us. They'll feed off of the information that we give to them. Crafty counsel. And consulted against our hidden ones. What was their objective? They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. Ethnocide, right? With the fanaticism that Spain has used against her Moors and Jews, Oriche planned to extinguish the, quote, illusionary nation of the Indians. Did you hear that? He said he wants to eradicate and remove the, quote, illusory nation of the Indians. Didn't they just say in the scriptures? Let us cut them off from being a nation. Oh, okay. A plan still dear to some Hispanic Peruvians of today. Rebel Incas were killed or exiled. All Incas lost their titles, the hereditary Caracaships, their robes, even their family portraits, which abound in the houses of Indians who hold themselves to be noble, to vaunt their ancestry. All Indians were to be taught Spanish within 4 years. Quechua song, music, theater were banned. See, any connection to history, culture, language had to be cut off. This was what happened to our people, Northern and Southern Kingdom. And it continues on to this day. I mean, look, we all know about the so-called blacks. How many times have our nationality or ethnic backgrounds been changed? Black, colored, Negro, Afro-American, African-American, Pan-African. I mean, the list goes on and on. Kemet, Commission, Kemite, whatever you want to call. How many times have we been going through this damn loop? Right? Chicano, Spanish not white, Latino with white. Like, they play these damn games. And it's all part of ethnocide. It's all part of them erasing his. This is the same reason why, like I just said, Negroes is out here, in line to go buy turkeys from Popeyes. You're not saying love that chicken from Popeyes no more. You trying to get the damn turkeys now. Oh yes, Thanksgiving, man. That damn Creole seasoned turkey Popeyes is the bomb. Plus, all I gotta do is just put it in the oven, whatever. I mean, I ain't doing. You understand? You forgot about the histories behind the genocide and the destruction of our people, the colonization and the stolen lands that happened, the lynching, the hanging, the burning. We just got through reading, man. Our people's getting fed to dogs routinely. Bodies getting quartered, cut, chopped down. Babies being cut from the wombs of their mothers, man, stomping on the fetus's head. We haven't even went into destruction of the Indies, but we'll get to the curses later on. That'll probably be part 3 or part 4. But nonetheless, all of this is going on as our people sat back and say, yeah, we forgot all about that. Now look at here. Ceremonial wise. Likewise, the what? Trumpets and horns that the Indians use in their ceremonies. That's right. Trumpets, horns. That's from Numbers 10. Traditionally, we knew and held on to that. But look at this. Likewise, the trumpets and horns that the Indians use in their ceremonies must be forbidden and taken away, especially those called pututu, marine shells with a strange and mournful sound by which they evoke the sorrowful remembrance of their past. See, when you notice our people, man, are locked into music, song, frequency, all of those things, right? We talk about how music evokes emotion. When you hear that song, you hear that person belt out that note, man, it gives you chills. That usually comes from the voice of an Israelite. The blues. You dig what I'm saying? Like that comes from our spirit. Soul is because we're connected in that fashion. You know, I can only speak for my era, but I respect the era of the 60s, 70s, and all of that for sure. Because hearing that coming up as a youngster helped frame my spirit. 70s, um, but in the 80s and 90s, even in the hip hop and rap era, there was always a positive element that came with it. You know, uh, you had groups like X Clan, Public Enemy, De La Soul, the Jungle Brothers, Poor Righteous Teachers, even Ice Cube. His first album, America's Most Wanted. This is all revolutionary music that was fighting back against the system, looking to teach and culturize our people. You're talking about a art form, a music form, man, that came from nothing. If you look at the origins of rap or whatnot, not to go off on a tangent, but you're talking about the youth, man, coming up in abandoned buildings and places in the Bronx that look like bombs and hit it, uh, coming up with a means to bring joy to the situation. With park jams and somebody hooking up a damn, Cool Herc hooking up a speaker and some turntables to a light pole in the park to have a party so people can have some escapism from the hell that they were living in. To be able to have a little party and park, and then coming up with dance styles and fashion and art and break dancing on cardboard and all kind of stuff, and slang to create a whole new identity and culture so that we can separate ourselves from what was going on in the world and what we are being identified. A whole new culture is being created. That's part of being Deuteronomy 7 and 6, a special people create this whole new thing called hip hop or rap or whatever, now to the point to where it is being corrupted, corporatized, it's been taken over by corporations. The influence that's been injected into this culture that was initially, created, is now just completely disappearing. They said for the first time there hasn't been one rap album or song in the top 40. So now that's being taken away. That voice is being removed. And some may say, hey, that's a good thing. Yeah, I agree to a certain extent. But the problem is that it's a similar tactic that's being used. Take away the voices so that they cannot speak or they cannot communicate. They can't have a remembrance or a sorrowful remembrance of their past. Take away them things, right? John Preston, they wanted us to do this back in the day too. What was it, Psalms? I think it's 73. No. What was it, Psalm 78? 137. I'm way off. It's lucky. Let's look at this. Psalm 137, right? Not to get off on a tangent on music, but that's just what my spirit moved when I was going over that. It's just so I can be more relatable too. Because they were taking away the instruments. They, even in the schools, man, me and Elder Ross have always talked about that. How they taking away the instruments from the schools, Remember back in the day, man, you had band, you had your music class. You should see brothers and sisters, man, walking down the streets with their trumpet cases or they trombone cases, having to take them home to practice. The drumsticks and the beat pad. Those things are all gone now. Now everything is digitized. They say that the number one song in the country is from an AI artist. It's AI now, and it's a Jake singing soulful, like what do you call it, church type hymns in the country music form. Number one is AI now. It's soulless now. So what does that do for the culture? What's that do for our people, man? That connection now is completely gone. That being an avenue is now gone, of waking up our people, inspiring the spirit, waking them up, giving them thoughts of saying, hey man, you're in oppression. You're in captivity. This is bondage. Wake up. We can't do that no more. Look at this. Psalms 137. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down. Yea, we wept when we remembered Zion. We hanged our harps upon the willows in the midst thereof. For there they that carried us away captive required us a song. Oh yeah, sing one of them old Negro spirituals, boy. Fiddler. Come on, come over and play that fiddle, boy. Remember that from Roots? Fiddler. Now, you know, they always want us to sing, tap dance, show our teeth. They always want us to entertain. You dig what I'm saying? I mean, you got Lil Boosie in it. They doing bar mitzvahs or anything for a check. Performing at, you know, at these damn for the Arabs. I mean, all kind of madness, man, is going on. Artists is over there taking checks, going to Dubai. They go to perform at Arab ceremonies and weddings, and anywhere you can get a little piece of change, man. But the heathen is always saying, "Hey, man, sing us one of them songs." Look at this. For there, they that carried us away captive required us a song, and they that wasted us required us of mirth, saying, "Sing us one of the songs of Zion." They that wasted us, man, the ones that's putting us in bondage, captivity, destroying our lives, taking our land, raping our wives, and all that. They saying, "Be happy about it." Remember that Bobby McFerrin? Don't worry, be happy. Required us mirth. Wipe that look off of your face. Stop crying. Stop whining. That was in the past. Be happy. Look where you're at. You're in America. Land of opportunity. There is no bondage. There is no captivity. There is no white, what do you call it? There is no race-based oppressive system. What? But they want one of them songs of Zion. But notice here, they said the trumpets, the horns that were used in ceremonies were forbidden and taken away. Right? Why? Because it said it would remind us of our past and the day of the conquest which they hold dread. Same tactics being used today, y'all. Here's another one. Look down here. It says here, you will scarcely find, this is from Juan Gines de Sepulveda in 1550, in his encounter dealing with Mexico, the Indians of Mexico. You will scarcely find traces of humanity in Indians who, quote, are so cowardly and timid that they scarcely withstand the appearance of our soldiers fleeing like women before a very few Spaniards. What does that remind us of? Look at that. Deuteronomy 28:25. We're going to go there. So they said you'll hardly find, let's read one more time. You will scarcely find traces of humanity in Indians. So number one, they saying our people ain't human, right? Now it says, who are so cowardly and timid that they scarcely withstand the appearance of our soldiers fleeing like women before a very few Spaniards. So what happened? Deuteronomy 28, verse 25. Yahweh shall cause thee to be smitten before thine enemies. That's why he was able to say that. Because of our cursing, because of our disobedience, we were being destroyed in front of our enemies. But watch this. Thou shalt go out one way against them and flee 7 ways before them. So they said at the sight of a few Spanish soldiers, man, even though we had them outnumbered, we would break loose, beaten feet. So you wonder why, a crew of 20 on a slave ship could conquer 150 slaves, and why we didn't have the strength of the resistance to take over. That's why. The Most High took our spirit, put us in complete fear and subjection to our enemies. So that testimony holds true. Now it says, we'll flee 7 ways before them and shall be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth. That's prophecy. Okay. This is from the book The Aztec. This is where the origins of the American Indians, they took the quote from this particular book. I just wanted to show y'all This is where they got it from regarding Diego Duran and his testimony regarding the Aztecs, his encounters with them. So down here it says, thus we can almost positively affirm that they are Jews and Hebrews. And I would not commit a great error if I were to state this as fact, considering their way of life, their ceremonies, their rites and superstitions, their omens and hypocrisies, so akin to the characteristics of those of the Jews. Continuing on here. Now, here's another portion from the book. We'll start here. It says, as proof thereof, we know that this newly arrived nation, latecomers from strange and remote regions, made a long and tedious journey, searching and finally taking possession of this land. He's talking about the Aztecs. He's talking about the Indians. They know that they weren't native to that land. They came from different areas throughout the world and took possession of the land. It says they spent many months and years in coming to this place. Well, isn't that what 2nd Ezra 13 says? Namely, a year and a half that it was going to take for them to leave the land of their captivity in Assyria to make it over here to Arsareth. Okay. The truth of this matter can be found by drawing on their traditions and paintings and by talking to their elders, some of whom are very old. Well, we read that in Deuteronomy 32:7 about ask thy elders and they shall tell thee. So the oral traditions is what he drew from as well. Duran's ideas on the Hebrew origins of the natives of the Americas and the probable migration of the people from the Near East to the New World constituted a favorite subject among the early colonial chroniclers. So this is a favorite subject that many of the early um, uh, friars and priests and researchers and historians were delving into, trying to figure out these 10 tribes. Who are they? Where they come from? Are these people, the Indians, and the indigenous tribes here in South Central America and the Caribbean islands, are they the people? So this became a popular subject. Columbus and Amerigo Vespucci were in agreement with the theory that Noah, after the great flood, had sent his children to all corners of the world. So you got one theory, Columbus and Amerigo Vespucci said, hey, these people got over here post the flood, and they were scattered based upon that. Joseph de Acosta, in his Historia Natural y Moral de las Indias, said in 1590 that he had little doubt that the settlers of the New World came together with their animals from Asia, from Europe, or from Africa. So the closer for him to acknowledge would be from Africa. Why I say that? Because in Genesis 15, the borders of our land stretch from the Tigris, which goes through Egypt, all the way up into northern Egypt, or what they call Lower Egypt, which is kind of backwards, but anyway, where you see Alexandria and all of that. The Tigris stretching all the way up there, all the way east to the Euphrates. So if you're going to include Africa, you have to include portions of Egypt. That was part of our land as well. So going with that theory, then yeah, they would have been right, or Joseph de Acosta would have been correct on that. Now it says, quote, although we would like to know how and why they came, he added, the origin de los indios del Nuevo Mundo e Indias Occidentales by Fray Gregorio Garcia and Fray Juan de Torquemadas, Monarchia Indiana, both discuss the settling of don't be laughing at my Spanish, y'all. Calm down. I'm trying. Bear with me. All right. So you got the particular friars, man. They're saying, well, both discuss the settling of the Americas by survivors of the flood, although Garcia was ahead of his time in believing that the settlers in reality came from the parts of the old world at different times. This chronicler and others also wrote of native ideas regarding their origins, as the Mixtec believed that they came from a great tree in the Aztec claim. All right, so you see various accounts, but all are agreeing that the people were not native to the land. They came from another land. They were indigenous to someplace else, but settled up over there, and the traditions that they follow are biblical. James Adair was an Irish trader by occupation and historian. He spent much time with Native American tribes in the South. I believe he was amongst the Chickasaw, the Choctaw, and some other tribes. But one thing's for sure, we're going to see here his testimony. This is a primary source. He's an eyewitness from what he received amongst his dwellings with the Native Americans. As the Israelites were divided into tribes and had chiefs over them, so the Indians divide themselves. So he said, look, the structure and how they maintained their community was similar to how the Israelites did. They were done by tribes and chieftains over their tribes. You know, Numbers, the first chapter and second chapter, deal with those things. I believe all the way into the third chapter. The structuring of our community, right? So they said they follow the same patterns. Each tribe forms a little community within the nation, and as the nation have its particular symbol, so hath each tribe the badge from which it is denominated. So each tribe will, would have a badge or a patch to acknowledge what tribe they were from. All right. So even within in the lands, you can kind of see here what he's talking about. They would have landmarks to acknowledge where they where they were from. You have 3 tribes on each 4 sides. You have 4 sides of the tabernacle. There'd be 3 tribes on each side, north, south, east, and west, to comprise all 12. Okay, so here's what you see how they got the little flags and whatnot. Even with some having and well, let's look at this first, right? Just real quick. I didn't even mean to press that, but nonetheless. All right. So you see here to the west, you got Benjamin, Ephraim, and Manasseh. To the north, you got Asher, Dan, and Naphtali. To the east, down here, you got Issachar, Judah, and Zebulun. And to the south, you got Gad, Reuben, and Simeon. So he was making a correlation saying, look, they separate themselves up into tribes. They mark what tribe they're from. That's where you see the flags and whatnot, showing what tribe they're from. And he's saying, hey, the Native Americans was doing a very similar custom to acknowledge who they were, right? So let's get back. I don't want to take too much time on that, but just to give you a visual of what he was thinking of and seeing in ancient times and noticing what they were doing here. It says the sachem of each tribe is a necessary party in conveyances and treaties, to which he affixes the mark of his tribe as a corporation. With us doth their public seal. If we go from nation to nation among them, we shall not find one who does not linearly distinguish himself by his respective family. So everybody knew what tribe they was from. They understood their lineages, right? The genealogical names from names which they assume are derived either from the names of those animals whereof the cherubim are said in Revelation to be compounded, or from such creatures as are most familiar to them. They are the families of the eagle, panther, tiger, and buffalo, the family of the bear, deer, raccoon, tortoise, snake, fish, and likewise of the wind. So, in fashion of them, naming their tribes after animals, this is kind of where they start going off, because they started getting into animal and earth worship. But you could say, hey, I'm such and such of the tribe of the eagle. I'm such and such of the tribe of the panther, buffalo, so forth and so on, right? It says the last, if not derived from the appearance of the divine glory as expressed by the prophet Ezekiel. Let's look at some more. Here's another argument that he made. By a strict permanent divine precept, the Hebrew nation were ordered to worship at Jerusalem, Jehovah, the true living God, and who by the Indians is titled Yahweh. See that? So the Indians knew and called upon Yahweh. And they say Yehovah. And you may have heard, and I don't know if it's a legitimate chant or not, but we've always heard about Indians saying, hey, Yahweh, hey, Yahweh, hey, Yahweh, hey, Yahweh. Why and how did they know that name, right? So in language, in dialect, they knew the name of the true and living God as Yahweh. Okay, which the 72 interpreters, either from ignorance or superstition, have translated Adonai, and is the very same as the Greek kurios, signifying sir, lord, or master, which is commonly applied to earthly continents without the least significance of or relation to that most great and awful name, which describes the divine essence who naturally. So they're talking about the name and how they came along with the name Yahweh and what it meant, right? So they understood and knew the power of the name of the Most High, and they know it's of Hebrew origin. So even through language and dialect, James Adair recognized this. Now, watch this. The ancient heathens, it is well known, worship the plurality of gods, gods which they formed to themselves according to their own liking, as various as the countries they inhabited, and as numerous, with some as the days of the year. But these Indian Americans paid their religious devour to Lok Itaholo Abba, the great beneficent, supreme Holy Spirit of fire. Now, notice here they even utilizing the word Abba. Abba means father, right? But what do they call the Most High? What did they acknowledge that when they say Yahweh, or when they acknowledge as Lok Istolobolo Abba, if I'm saying that correctly, means the great, beneficent, supreme Holy Spirit of fire. So when we see that name, what is this going on up here? Deuteronomy 4. Oops. Lucky. And 24. It says, for Yahweh thy power is a consuming fire, even a jealous God. So they understood and knew the power of the Most High just along with that scripture alone, right? Deuteronomy, the 9th chapter. Verse 3. Understand therefore this day that Yahweh thy power is he which goeth over before thee as a what? Consuming fire. He shall destroy them and shall bring them down before thy face. So shalt thou drive them out and destroy them quickly, as Yahweh have said unto thee. So you see here, the Native Americans, they were acknowledging and correlating the name of the Most High with being a consuming and destroying fire, what do they say? Beneficent fire, right? Supreme, Holy Spirit of fire. Daniel 7, verse 9. I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow. Everybody knows, nobody's going to dispute that the Ancient of Days isn't the Most High. Everybody knows the Ancient of Days is speaking of the Most High in Daniel's vision. And the hairs of his head were and the hair of his head like the pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. See that? So he's sitting on a throne of fire. It says in his wheels as burning fire, right? So you can either interpret that to say, man, that the throne had wheels and they was on fire, or we were just talking about this last weekend after the Sabbath, and looking at it from the metaphor of it being his legs. Because remember, when you talk about somebody who was fast, if you was in track or you talking about something, you would always say, man, that dude got wheels. What did they mean? Was it literal or no? You were talking about how fast that guy's legs would move, moving like wheels, right? He was fat. It said the Most High's wheels, meaning his legs, are like burning fire as well, right? So we see here another correlation in regards to how they worship and how they understood the power of the Most High, same way we see scripturally. Continuing on, it says the ceremonies of the Indians and their religious worship are more after the Mosaic institution than of pagan imitation. So James Adair said that everything I'm noticing, they are holding more closer to the ceremonial rites of a Mosaic institution than of paganism. It says, which could not be if the majority of the old natives were the heathenist descent. So he said there's no way that they would be doing what they're doing if they were just complete heathens. No way. No way. right? So that's also another testimony. Yeah, we'll just move on. Okay. Now, here's another testimony of one of the tribes in Guatemala, the Cacique tribe. This is from the book, The Annals of the Caciques, title of the lords of the Totonicapana, uh, history within Central America, right? So now we're talking about the Maya. Now, the Maya were located within Guatemala. This is a testimony of 1604. Another eyewitness testimony that says this, page 170. These then were the three nations of the Quiches, and they came from where the sun rises, meaning what? They came from the east. Another testimony acknowledging they didn't come, they weren't over here already. They came over here, came from where the sun rises, came from the east, descendants of Israel, of the same language and the same customs. So we're seeing the Aztecs, we're seeing the Mayas with the Guatemalans, we're seeing what happened down there with the Incas in South America, all drawing conclusions. These are the Israelites. These are the descendants of the Hebrews, right? And we just got to reading about the Native Americans here in America through James Adair's testimony saying, like, these are the Hebrews, man. They got too many ceremonial rites as Mosaic in nature. They're calling on Yahweh. They acknowledge their higher power is a strong, burning, consuming fire, magnificent. It's too many correlations, right? Now it says when they rose from Pasivan, the first leader was Balaam Kitezi by unanimous vote, and then the great father. These Mayan names is hard, so bear with me. Natsexik gave them a present called Garan Gagal. When they arrived at the edge of the sea, Balaam Kitezi touched it with his staff, and at once path opened, which then closed up again. And thus the great God wished it to be done, because they were the sons of Abraham and Jacob. Hello? Did you hear that? It says, closed it up again, for thus the great God wished it to be done, because they were sons of Abraham and Jacob. So it was that these three nations passed through, and with them 13 others called Bakumag. So, you got various testimonies that's coming from not only the tribal leaders, but the observers that was amongst them, drawing themselves in with being descendants of the Israelites. All right. Now look at this here. You talk about demons, man, and why our people need to really wake up and get up out this hellhole called Catholicism. Much of this began with them, starting with this, right? You have what's known as papal bulls. These was written documents coming from the Catholic Church that they gave authority for the Spaniards to go out, conquer, kill, destroy, and convert the Saracens, or what they call the infidels, the heathens, to convert to their religion and take anything that they wanted. Okay. So, many of our people are going to sit back and in the Catholic religion, they're going to be getting ready for Christmas. They just got through condoning Thanksgiving, not realizing, man, all of these are traditions and idolatrous ways that were inherited and even forced upon our people. Look at this. Pope Alexander VI. That's right. Same one. Rodrigo Borgia, father of Cesare Borgia, the white image of Christ. What did he do? He issues a papal bull or decree, Inter Caetera, in which he authorizes Spain and Portugal to colonize the Americas and its native peoples as subjects. The decree asserts the rights of Spain and Portugal to colonize, convert, and enslave. It also justifies the enslavement of Africans. So the Catholics had a great hand in Jeremiah 50:33. The children of Israel and the children of Judah being oppressed together. Yeah, the Catholic Church put out the papal bulls, man, threw us all into bondage. From the Spanish Inquisition all the way down to the transporting slaves from America back to Spain and the West Africa, the transatlantic. I mean, they did it all. Out of our own soul, largest and certain knowledge, and out of the fullness, this is part of the papal bull. Listen to this. Out of the fullness of our apostolic power, right? By the authority of Almighty God, conferred upon us in blessed Peter and in the vicarship of Jesus Christ. So they saying this is all done through the authority that the Most High gave them and through Christ, which we hold on earth, due by tenor of these presents, should any of said islands have been found by your envoys and captives, give grant and assign you and your heirs and successors, King of Castile and Leon, forever together with all the dominions, cities, camps, places, and villages, and all rights, jurisdictions, and appurtenances, all islands and mainlands, found and to be found. So they said anything that you find and anything that you do find, it's all ours and yours. Discovered and to be discovered towards the west and south by drawing and establishing a line from the Arctic pole, namely the north, to the Antarctic pole, namely the south, no matter whether the said mainlands and the islands are to be found in the direction of India or toward any other quarter. The said line to be distant 100 leagues toward the west and south from any of the islands commonly known as the Azores and Cape Verde, with this proviso, however, that none of the islands and mainlands found and to be found, discovered and to be discovered beyond that said line toward the west and south, be in the actual possession of any Christian king or prince up to the birthday of our Lord Jesus Christ, just past, from which the present year 1493 begins. And we make a point and depute you and your said heirs and successor lords of them with full and free power, authority, and jurisdiction of every kind. You see the arrogancy, man, the so-called white man. You talk about Job 9:24 and the earth being given into the hand of the wicked. They understood and knew that, man, and they moved along with fierceness, ferocity, as they say. They said, man, you got full and free power, authority, and jurisdiction of every kind. They was deputized and said, your heirs, successors, they'll be lords with free and full power. Lands discovered and undiscovered is yours. This is what you call the doctrine of discovery. Now look at this. From Columbus to Castro, the history of the Caribbean. I'll probably read a few excerpts of this, and I'm going to close out this part, and then we'll double back, and I'll upload and do some more part 3 and 4 as the spirit moves. But I'm going to try to be more consistent in getting through this, because I got damn near 100 slides, and that's not everything, but I just did it that enough because I'm like, okay, if 100 don't prove it, I don't know what else to tell you. So we got some more to go. So I'm gonna read some from this book, and then I'll probably close it out there, and look for part 3, 4, and however many the spirit leads to. All right. So from Columbus to Castro, the history of the Caribbean. As the years went by, Columbus more and more adopted the view that the real riches of the West Indies lay in their Indian population. The real riches of the West Indies lay in the Indian and the population. What does Revelation 2:9 say? I know thy poverty and tribulation, but thou art rich. Yeah. We're rich as being ourselves. We're rich alone through spirit, through the knowledge and the wisdom and understanding and the covenant agreement that we have with the Most High. Columbus knew this. It ain't just the gold. It ain't just the paper money, man. We alone are valuable. Black gold, as they call us. Continuing on, it says, he saw that the cannibalism of the Caribs, a pretext for their enslavement. He described them as a wild people fit for any work, well proportioned and very intelligent, and who, when they have got rid of their cruel habits to which they have been accustomed, will be better than any other kind of slaves. So in other words, he's saying, oh, the Caribs, they're over there cannibalizing each other. You know, come on. They probably have some light cases of that, but our people was very cultured, civilized. So-called white man was the one over here coming fresh out the caves, trying to get accustomed to civilization. Our people was living off the land. Our people knew and understood everything from botanicals, knowledge with the herbs, the plants. We had to teach him how to bathe and deodorize himself, how to survive off the land, utilizing various utensils, hunting, gathering. I mean, we was over here surviving, man. This cat over here talking about, yeah, they was over here just eating each other and if you don't knock it off. But anyway, on his third voyage in 1498, look at the year, He had shipped 600 Indians back to Spain. So again, we have to acknowledge the time frame of when. So when we talk about Deuteronomy 28:68, yes, the primary source that we always relate to is the transatlantic slave trade. But let's not forget there was a vast trading of slaves from the Americas going back to Europe, in particular Spain. 1498, 600 Indians were being sent to Spain. So sometimes you might hear from the indigenous population or community, aboriginals, oh, the slave trade happened in reverse. We was already here. They shipped us back to Africa. They shipped us to Spain. Part of that is true, but we was not already here. Just as we seen through some of the particular testimonies, everybody acknowledged that we came from the east and settled here. But were we taking on cargo slave ships and brought to Europe and Spain, England? Yes. All right. On the third voyage in 1498, he shipped 600 Indians back to Spain. The slave trade in the Caribbean or Caribbean, depending on how you pronounce it. I know there's a little controversy about that. Is it Caribbean or is it Caribbean? Whatever you prefer. All right. The slave trade in the Caribbean thus began as outward and not inward cargoes, taking the form of Indians transported from the West Indies to Spain rather than of Negroes transported from West Africa to the Caribbean. Right. In the meantime, however, the Pope had enjoined on the Spanish sovereigns the duty of treating the Indians kindly and converting them to Catholicism. So this is what the Pope said. They brought the slaves over and they said, well, look, bow down and convert to Catholicism. We'll make your life a little easier. Buck up and rebel. We're going to make your life a living hell. Bars. Now, it says the sovereigns thereupon issued a royal decree whereby those Indians who accepted Spanish sovereignty and submitted to it without resistance were considered subjects of the crown. You was integrated into society, right? Forced assimilation. The power of the sword is going to make you bow down. You're going to start bowing down to Caesar. You're going to start getting into the rosary. You're going to start bowing down to idols. You're going to acknowledge all of this false indoctrinations of the Trinity and so forth. So everything that came up out of this. So they were made subjects of the crown, meaning workers of the crown, loyalists to the crown. They'll be integrated into society. It says, and as such could not be reduced to slavery. So they wouldn't be forced to be slaves if they converted. The decree left the road open to the enslavement of those who resisted. The legal basis for slavery became the infamous requisition read out by a notary to natives who did not understand Spanish. The others were to be treated as free men and employed for wages. So you see how they created the class system? Either you was going to be an Uncle Tom, sell out, bow down, and worship, or you could stand and rebel and just become a slave. Either way, we see that Catholicism was forced on our people. And that's become a tradition, a religious tradition, heresies and idolatry that our people have, bought into. Continuing on. In the meantime, however, the Pope had enjoined on the Spanish sovereigns the duty of treating the Indians kindly and converting them to Catholicism. Oh, this is the same page, Shalaki. I did that twice. Let me read one more. The Taínos and the other Arawak people did not resist conversion to the Europeans' religion. The Taínos and the Arawaks, these are the inhabitants of, Cuba, Puerto Rico, the Dominican islands, in that area, right? Now, this is a quote from Bury My Heart and Wounded Knee, an Indian history of the American West. Now, it says that the Taínos and the Arawak people did not resist conversion to the European religion, but they did resist strongly when hordes of these bearded strangers began scouring their islands in search of gold and precious stones. The Spaniards looted and burned villages. They kidnapped hundreds of men, women, and children and shipped them to Europe to be sold as slaves. All right. So if we're talking about the curses in Deuteronomy 28, and there you shall be sold unto your enemies, and you're gonna go on slave ships and all that. Yeah. It also happened to the Taínos, the Arawaks. and the other indigenous tribes in the Caribbean islands and here in the Americas. Spaniards looted and burned villages. They kidnapped hundreds of men, women, and children and shipped them to Europe to be sold as slaves. Arawak resistance brought on the use of guns and sabers, and whole tribes were destroyed. Hundreds of thousands of people in less than a decade after Columbus set foot on the beach of San Salvador, October 12th, 1492. They said this all happened within less than a decade. That's 10 years. So from 1492 to 1502, hundreds of Arawak Indians, Taino Indians destroyed. Whole tribes wiped out. Thousands of people destroyed. So when you're talking about raising up the body count of the so-called white man and what he did to our people, man, it doesn't even compare to anything any other nation has done to us. I mean, he's the murderer of all the damn nations, really. Let's read another part of the book. It says, when the Dutch came to Manhattan Island, Peter Minuit purchased it for 60 guilders in fish hooks and glass beads, but encouraged the Indians to remain and continue exchanging their valuable peltries for such trinkets. In 1641, William Kieft levied tribute upon the Machicans and sent soldiers to Staten Island to punish the Rarotans for offenses which had been committed not by them but by white settlers. So now we're talking about even up in the Northeast, in New York. This is dealing with the indigenous populations in 1641. Being forced to make paying tribute, right, to our oppressors. Now watch this. The Raritans resisted arrest, and the soldiers killed 4 of them. When the Indians retaliated by killing 4 Dutchmen, Kieft ordered the massacre of 2 entire villages while the inhabitants slept. The Dutch soldiers ran their bayonets through men, women, and children, hacked their bodies to pieces, and then leveled the villages with fire. So not only are we talking about this happening in Staten Island in New York and the Raritan Indians over there, but a similar thing happened down there with the Pequot Indians and the Wampanoag Indians, and the whole story about the damn settlers coming over here and sitting down and having a nice big old meal and everybody eating and thinking. No, our people was getting killed and murdered at night. Villages being burnt down after being betrayed and destroyed by these oppressors, man. All right, and here's one more thing. You can see here Deuteronomy 28:33. Indian land for sale. Right, this was an advertisement that was made. Let's read that Deuteronomy 28:33, and then we'll close out and we'll pick it up. Most I will, and I'll have another one. I have a part 3 set up to go probably next week. Most I permit. Deuteronomy 28 verse 33. The fruit of thy land and all thy labor shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up, and thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed always. So the land that we was cultivating, that we was given, or that we would have, will be taken away. We wouldn't profiteer off of the land anymore. They would take it all from us, right? One of the main curses also says, curse shalt thou be in the city, curse shalt thou be in the field. You understand? And here we see here, Indian land for sale, get a home of your own, easy payments, perfect title, possession within 30 days. Fine lands in the West. Grazing, agricultural dry farming, irrigatable. You understand? Look at all. Colorado, Idaho, Kansas, Montana, Nebraska, North Dakota, Wyoming. All these lands taken. All the acres that they had available. As they went and stole this land from our people, man, and then put it up for sale. And told our people, hey, get ready. We got it for sale, y'all. All right. So I'm gonna stop there, man. We'll look for part 3. All praise, honor, and glory to the Most High, Yahweh. If you haven't, liked the video or whatnot, make sure you do so. So that this algorithm can kick, man, and we can get this information spread it out there, man. Shabbat shalom, everybody. Y'all be well. See you on the next go round.